Lucas Sterling. You've probably never heard the name, but you've felt his influence. In the glass towers of global finance, his name was whispered with a mix of awe and fear. Lucas moved the world with a tap on his phone. His company, Sterling Global, was a beast with tentacles in everything from tech to textiles. The stock price was his only religion. He could get a company or shift a small country's fortunes before his first coffee of the day. Power was his oxygen, profit was his pulse. But on a random Tuesday evening, in a high-end restaurant he happened to own but had never truly seen, all of that was about to come crashing down. Not from a market crash. Not from a corporate spy. But from a black waitress, a folded napkin, and 6 words that would stop his world from spinning and force him to look in the mirror. He thought he was just ordering a steak. He was about to be served a cold, hard plate of truth. Section 1, A World of Numbers and Indifference. To get Lucas Sterling, you had to see his office. It wasn't just a room, it was a statement. Perched on the 80th floor, it was a minimalist temple of glass and steel. No family photos, no sentimental junk. Just a desk, a chair, and a God's-eye view of the world he was busy conquering. His mantra, drilled into his employees like a chilling sermon, was, "Sentiment is a liability. Empathy is an expense." To Lucas, people weren't people. They were assets or liabilities. Numbers on a spreadsheet. Heads to be counted or, more often, heads to be cut. His latest prize was a chain of restaurants called The Gilded Steer. It wasn't a passion project, it was a hostile takeover. He didn't buy it for the famous food or its old-world charm, he bought it because its balance sheet showed a weakness he could exploit. The chain, once a family business known for treating its staff like gold, was now just another line item in his portfolio. He'd already sent his most ruthless COO, a shark named Marcus Graves, to optimize efficiency, corporate speak for gutting it from the inside out. So on this particular evening, Lucas decided to drop in. Not for a nice meal, but for a field inspection. He rolled up not like a diner, but like a king surveying newly captured land. He strode into the warm, amber-lit lobby, his eyes cold and scanning. He wasn't seeing the rich mahogany or soft chandeliers, he was calculating depreciation and lighting costs. A young host approached with a nervous smile. "Good evening, sir. Reservation?" Lucas didn't even slow down. "I own it," he said, not with arrogance, but like he was stating the time. "Best table." He blew past the stunned host, his gaze already spotting flaws. A waiter taking 2 steps when one would do. Busboys chatting for 3 seconds too long. He saw liabilities everywhere. He was seated at a prime corner booth with a full view of the floor. He didn't glance at the menu. He knew what he wanted, the most expensive thing on it, the 48-ounce, King's Cut, porterhouse. It was a pure power move. As he settled in, a waitress approached. Her name was Sarah. Sarah was a single mom to an 8-year-old boy and the kind of employee who holds a place together. She was professional, perceptive, and had a deep well of patience tested by years of demanding customers. She'd been at the Gilded Steer for over a decade, long before the Sterling Global takeover, and she remembered when the place felt like a family. Now, it felt like a factory. "Good evening, sir," Sarah said, her voice calm and steady. "My name is Sarah. Can I start you off with a drink?" Lucas didn't look up from his phone. "Sparkling water. No ice." His tone was clipped, dismissive. Like he was talking to a smart speaker. Sarah kept her composure. "Excellent choice. Are you ready to?" He cut her off, eyes still locked on his screen. "King's Cut. Medium rare. And fast. I have a call in 45 minutes. With a flick of his hand, she was dismissed. In his mind, she'd already ceased to exist. She was just a function, a cog in his machine. He had no idea this particular cog was about to hold up a mirror and show him the monster he'd become. Section 2, An Act of Unbearable Truth. The vibe at the Gilded Steer had soured since Sterling Global took over. The staff, many of them long-timers, now worked under the cold, efficient thumb of an algorithm. It was Marcus Graves' masterpiece, a data-driven scheduling system that made a stable life impossible. Shifts were assigned at random, making it tough to hold a second job or arrange childcare. Hours were carefully capped just below the number needed to qualify for health insurance or overtime. It was a quiet, soul-crushing cruelty. Sarah felt it every day. Her son, Leo, had just been diagnosed with asthma, and the loss of her health insurance was a constant, gnawing fear. She saw that same fear in her coworkers' eyes. There was David, the bartender, now driving for a rideshare service on his nights off. And Maria, the pastry chef, selling cakes on the side to make rent. Lucas, oblivious in his booth, took a business call. His voice was a low, brutal weapon. "I don't care about their tenure," he snapped into his phone. "The numbers are weak. Trim the fat by 12%. Make it happen. I don't want a debate, I want a result." Standing by a service station, Sarah overheard him. Trim the fat. The words hit her like a punch. She thought of David and Maria. They weren't fat. They were people. But the final straw came moments later. Lucas's water glass was empty. He didn't call for Sarah. He snapped his fingers at a young busboy, a teenager named Kevin. "Boy. Water." Kevin, startled, rushed over. His hand trembled, and a single drop of water splashed on the table. It was nothing. But at that exact moment, the COO, Marcus Graves, was striding by. He saw the drop and his face twisted into a mask of fury. "Are you incompetent?" Graves hissed, his voice a venomous whisper. "This is $1,000 table you're defacing. One more mistake like that, and you'll be lucky to be cleaning toilets." Kevin froze, his face pale with humiliation, looking like he might cry. Sarah saw the whole thing. The casual cruelty of Graves, just a parrot mimicking his boss's soulless philosophy. The shame on that poor kid's face. And in that moment, something inside her broke. The fear she'd lived with for months was suddenly burned away by a clean, righteous anger. The risk of losing her job suddenly felt smaller than the certainty of losing her self-respect if she stayed silent. She thought of her son. What kind of world was she building for him if good people said nothing? Her heart pounded. She looked over at Lucas, head buried in his tablet, completely unaware of the little drama that had just played out in his name. He was the source. The decision was terrifying, reckless, and absolutely necessary. Back in the kitchen, his steak was ready, a magnificent king's cut, resting on a perfect white plate. A symbol of his world, excess, power, detachment. She grabbed a clean napkin. Her mind raced. What could she say? How could you boil down a building full of anxiety and struggle into just a few words? With a pen from her apron, her hands shaking so badly she could barely write, she put down the only thing that mattered. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't an accusation. It was just the truth. She walked back out, the heavy plate in one hand, the folded napkin in the other. She approached the booth where the king sat in his temporary castle. "Your steak, Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice miraculously steady. She placed the plate before him. Then, in one quiet, fluid motion, she set the folded napkin right beside his hand. At first, Lucas didn't notice. But then his eyes caught the small, white square. He sighed, irritated, assuming it was a complaint or a brazen request for a bigger tip. He picked it up and unfolded it. The note contained only 6 words. 6 words that hit him with the force of a speeding car. "My son can't afford a birthday cake." He stared at the neat, slightly shaky handwriting. He blinked. He read them again. "My son can't afford a birthday cake." The air left his lungs. The sounds of the restaurant, the clinking of glasses, the hum of chatter, faded into a roaring silence. He slowly lifted his eyes and found her across the room, pretending to polish glasses, her back to him. But he could see the tension in her shoulders. She was terrified. And she was the bravest person he'd ever met. He looked from the note to the mountain of meat on his plate. It suddenly looked grotesque. Obscene. He felt a wave of nausea. The note wasn't asking for pity. It was a mirror. And in it, he saw a man who trimmed the fat without a second thought. He saw a man who cheered for algorithms that stripped people of their dignity. He remembered a magazine profile of himself, smiling next to his own son at a lavish birthday party, with a cake that probably cost more than this woman made in a week. He felt a deep, gut-wrenching shame. His armor of indifference, worn for decades, had just been pierced by a napkin. The truth wasn't just that his employee couldn't afford a cake. The truth was that he had built an empire that manufactured that injustice, and he had the nerve to call it efficiency. He was a man who had everything, but in that moment, he felt utterly bankrupt. The steak went cold. The note lay on the table like a white flag of surrender in a war Lucas hadn't even known he was fighting. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking, he was feeling. He looked around the room, but through new eyes. He no longer saw staffing units, he saw people. He saw the host, forcing a smile while probably worrying about student loans. He saw the chefs in the kitchen, sweating it out for a paycheck that barely covered rent. He saw Sarah, her quiet courage radiating across the room. His world of black and white numbers had just exploded into messy, human color. He had to do something. Not tomorrow. Now. He slowly folded the napkin and placed it in his jacket pocket like a precious jewel. He pulled out his wallet and laid several $100 bills on the table. Then he stood up and walked directly toward Sarah. She saw him coming and braced herself, expecting to be fired on the spot. Lucas stopped in front of her. His entire demeanor had changed. "What is your name?" he asked, his voice quiet, stripped of its usual command. "Sarah," she whispered. He nodded slowly. "Sarah. Thank you. For the note. I needed to read that." He then turned his gaze to Marcus Graves, the COO, who was watching with a smug, confused look. Lucas's expression turned to ice. "Mr. Graves," he said, his voice now cold steel. "Your behavior earlier was unacceptable. That is not how we treat our people. Not anymore. We'll be discussing your future first thing in the morning." Without another word, he turned and walked out, leaving behind a stunned dining room, a terrified COO, and a waitress trembling with a dizzying, unbelievable sense of hope. The next morning, Sterling Global's top executives were summoned to an emergency meeting. They arrived in their tailored suits, expecting the 80th floor boardroom. Instead, their black cars pulled up to the service entrance of the Gilded Steer. Confused and annoyed, they were led through the chaos of the kitchen into the cramped, windowless employee break room. Lucas was waiting for them. Standing with him was Sarah, still in her waitress uniform. "Good morning," Lucas began. "Welcome to the new temporary headquarters. Have a seat." The execs, including a sweating Marcus Graves, awkwardly took their folding chairs. "For years," Lucas started, "I preached that numbers are the only truth and sentiment is a liability. I was wrong. Profoundly, catastrophically wrong." He let that sink in. "We have been running this company with a calculator where its heart should be. We celebrate record profits while the people earning them can't afford their lives. We called it smart business. It was a moral failure." He pulled the napkin from his pocket and held it up. "Last night, this woman," he said, gesturing to Sarah, "had the courage to tell me a truth that none of us had the decency to see." He read the 6 words aloud, his voice thick with emotion. "My son can't afford a birthday cake." The room was dead silent. This, Lucas said, his voice cracking slightly, is the true cost of our record profits. He looked directly at Marcus Graves. Marcus, you're fired. Your philosophy is a cancer we're cutting out today. He then turned to the rest of the shell-shocked team. Today, everything changes. The scheduling algorithm is gone. Effective immediately, every single employee of this company, full-time or part-time, will be paid a living wage. Anyone working over 20 hours a week gets full health benefits. No exceptions. The CFO finally sputtered, Lucas, with all due respect, the financial hit will be massive. Our shareholders. Lucas cut him off. A happy employee is a productive one. A secure employee is a loyal one. This isn't just a moral imperative, it's the only way to build a company that lasts. He took a breath. To make sure this sticks, I'm creating a new C-suite position, reporting directly to me, Vice President of Employee Dignity. He turned and looked at Sarah. And I'm offering the job to her. Sarah gasped. Me? Mr. Sterling. I'm a waitress, she stammered. No, Lucas said gently. You're the conscience of this company. You understand the human cost in a way none of us ever could. We need you. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. She looked at the stunned executives, then back at Lucas, took a deep breath, and nodded. Yes, she said, her voice clear and strong. Yes, I accept. Conclusion, a new currency. Months later, the Gilded Steer was a different place. The tension was gone, replaced by a genuine warmth. The staff smiled. Customer satisfaction shot through the roof. Staff turnover hit rock bottom. And profits, after a small dip, began to climb higher than ever. The story of the billionaire and the waitress's note went viral, not as a scandal, but as an inspiration. The final scene is back in that corner booth. Lucas and Sarah sit together, not as boss and employee, but as partners. I visited the textile plant in North Carolina last week, Sarah said, smiling. They started a subsidized daycare program. The employees were just happy. Lucas nodded. You did that, Sarah. You showed them they matter. All I did was sign the checks. You listened, she corrected him. That's where it started. He looked across the bustling restaurant. You didn't just save my company, he said quietly. The man who walked in here all those months ago, he was a ghost. Rich in dollars but bankrupt in everything that mattered. You saved me. Sarah's note didn't just change a company, it changed a man. It's a powerful reminder that true wealth isn't measured by a stock ticker. It's measured in dignity, in connection, and in the courage to speak a simple truth to power. Call to action. One person's courage can change everything. One voice can remind us all what it means to be human. If you believe a single act of bravery can make a difference, share this story. And for more stories that celebrate the power of the human spirit, make sure you subscribe. Because sometimes, changing the world starts with simply changing the way we see it.